What's up, everybody? Welcome to this edition of the Stephen A. Smith Show, coming at you over the digital airwaves of YouTube and iHeartRadio. We've now eclipsed over 1.06 million subscribers. Can't thank y'all for the love and support enough just on that alone, let alone the millions of downloads that we received over the last few months off of iHeartRadio as well. Thank you so much. Got a lot of stuff to get into, so I'm going to get into it real quickly. We're going to get started with the world of politics, where the world has changed over the last 2 days. Donald Trump was inaugurated as the 47th president of the United States of America and went straight to work within hours of his swearing-in ceremony. Trump signed at least 46 executive orders and presidential actions Monday that addressed a number of campaign pledges. The executive orders included the end of Biden-era border policies and pardoning more than 1,500 people from the January 6th Capitol riots. Trump also ordered all federal employees in diversity, equity, and inclusion roles placed on paid leave by tonight, Wednesday, January 22nd. In addition to all of that, Donald Trump withdrew the United States from the World Health Organization, a significant move that drew criticism from public health experts. Couple of things get to my mind, and that's what I want to start first, okay? First things first. In terms of pardoning folks from the riots, Capitol, in the U.S. Capitol, January 6, 2021, I do not agree with that decision by the President of the United States. I do believe that a lot of folks should have been pardoned, etc. But when you bring up Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers and considering the charges that were leveled against them, anybody, and I'm just using that as an example, anybody that engaged in violence, to me, that should have been different. If you're the Commander-in-Chief of the United States of America, if you preach about the importance of law and order, and someone has flagrantly engaged in lawlessness, but you give them a pass just because they supported you, you're not supporting the law, you're supporting you. Again, the vast majority of people who found themselves really under the eyes and the microscopic focus of the federal government, particularly on the left, when it came to arresting them, indicting them, and ultimately convicting them of charges, the vast majority of people who may have been sent to jail or was scheduled to go to prison, those folks, everybody doesn't deserve that. But anybody who's engaged in violence, I'm sorry, you know that that's lawless. You know, walking in to the rotunda, walking into the U.S. Capitol and taking pictures and storming the gates or whatever, that might not have been something they should still be incarcerated for. But if you committed violence against people, if you committed violence against law enforcement officials, and you got let off, that's bad, especially when you're being let off by an individual who's supposed to be our chief law enforcement officer, essentially. You're the Commander-in-Chief. That's how I look at it. I know the Attorney General and all this stuff. You're the Commander-in-Chief, period. That should not have happened. Just on that front. I'll leave it at that. We'll discuss that at a later date. I want to say something about diversity, equity, and inclusion because I've been noticing something on the right that's getting on my damn nerves. And I've appeared on numerous occasions on Fox News. I've appeared on numerous occasions on News Nation, CNN, a couple of times on MSNBC. I'm not ducking, I'm not hiding. Just recently got interviewed by Dave Rubin. I'm friends with Sean Hannity and Mark Levin. I know these people, okay? Let me be very, very clear about what I want to say about when it comes to diversity, equity, inclusion that's making me very, very uncomfortable. I'm sick and tired of folks on the right, and I'm not talking about those individuals. I'm just talking about the right, period, in general. I'm sick and tired of folks bringing up DEI as if it's a bad thing to bring up. Like everybody who got a job under DEI must not have been qualified. They got it because of diversity, equity, and inclusion policies implemented into corporate America and beyond. Stop. Stop. The reason DEI existed to begin with was because there were an abundance of qualified individuals from minority communities throughout this country you didn't give a second look to because they didn't look like you. I can come with it from a world of sports. When you look at the Rooney Rule, there were black coaches that were interviewed and ultimately got jobs. Why was the Rooney Rule necessary? Because there were qualified black coaches that were being ignored. And if you're being ignored and denied the opportunity to prove that you're worthy and possibly more qualified and more competent than a white counterpart, then rules and legislation need to be implemented to ensure fairness. So while you're on the right preaching and speaking about DEI in a negative way, you might actually be right in some cases. But could you at least remember why it came into existence to begin with? Because you weren't interested in being fair before. Now, the left might have came about and handled it all wrong and been a bit excessive in their behavior and elevated the level of cynicism that comes attached with DEI. But you don't get to forget what role was played that provoked the existence of DEI to begin with. That's all I'm saying. I'm an independent, as we have articulated on this show on numerous occasions. I'm not siding with any side definitively. I just want to make the point that fair is fair. And there's a lot of problems that I have with and will continue to have and will continue to express and articulate about what we witnessed from the left. But that don't let you off on the right. I'm talking about those of you with malintent. You've denied plenty of opportunities throughout history to people that come from minority communities throughout this country. That's why DEI came into existence. That's why stuff like the Rooney Rule is in existence. That's why you had affirmative action that was in existence. A lot of things are changing in this world. It's a lot of stuff to discuss. But you don't get to forget your role in forcing that stuff to come about to begin with. You can try to gloss over history. It ain't gonna be that easy. Remember I said that. And we'll talk about that in the very near future as well. Coming up, much more on the Trump administration with my next guest. He is the mayor of New York City, who recently spent time with President Trump at Mar-a-Lago. The one and only Eric Adams joins me right here in studio, face to face with your boy, Stephen A. Trust me when I say, you don't want to miss this. All right, y'all, listen up. Do you know that the NFL championship games are right around the corner and that we're smack in the middle of the NBA season? So with all this action going on, the Stephen A. Smith Show wants to make sure you take advantage of it all. That's why we've partnered with PrizePicks, the best place to get real money action while watching your favorite sports. You see, with PrizePicks, you pick two or more of your favorite players, and then you simply select more or less of the projected stats for the game. Pick Jaden Daniels' passing yards, Amari Cooper's receiving yards, or Giannis Antetokounmpo's rebounds, all in the same entry. And get this, with PrizePicks Flex Friday, every member gets a protected play. That's right, you can cash out even if your lineup isn't perfect. So download the app today and use the code SAS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app and use code SAS to get $50 instantly after your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, yo, run your game. Now, let's look at my picks for today. I'll be making picks for the NFC Championship game, y'all, the Philadelphia Eagles versus the Washington Commanders. First up, we have Commanders quarterback Jaden Daniels facing the Eagles secondary. More or less than 0.5 passing yards, of course, is more. Well, he ain't going to complete a pass. Unless he gets hurt on the first play of the game. What the hell is he going to do? Of course he's going to have more. That's the easy one right there. Next up, Commanders wide receiver Terry McLaurin. More or less than 64.5 receiving yards. That's a brother. That brother special. I'm going to go with more on this one as well. Make no mistake about that. He's that kind of dude. Next up, we have Eagles running back Saquon Barkley. More or less than 127.5 rushing yards. Less what, y'all? For once, I'm going to go with less. See, I think the Washington Commanders are going to key on this brother. They can't let this man run for 200 yards. They can't let this man run for 460 yards over 2 games the way he did against the Los Angeles Rams this season. They got to make sure that Saquon Barkley rushed for 2,005 yards this season, okay, was a candidate for league MVP honors, could have won it if he played that last game of the regular season against his old team, the New York Giants, if Coach Nick Sirianni had let him play. That same Saquon Barkley is going to be the key. You know why? Because the Washington Commanders are going to say, make Jalen Hurts beat us. We know A.J. Brown is that dude. We know Devontae Smith can ball. We know Dallas Goedert can get his stuff done. But in the end, if you make Jalen Hurts throw the football, that's our best chance to beat the Philadelphia Eagles, because we can't let Saquon Barkley continue to run that ball. That's going to be their strategy. They're going to load the box. They're going to make the Philadelphia Eagles throw, and Jalen Hurts is going to have to beat you. Finally, we have Eagles wideout A.J. Brown up against the Commanders, more or less than 60.5 receiving yards. I'm going to go with more, because I think Jalen Hurts is going to have to throw the football. And if you're going to throw the football, you got to get it to that brother, that stud, A.J. Brown. You dropped a couple of passes last week, A.J. Brown. I saw you. You can't be talking, chirping, or being quiet while reading books on the damn sideline and then go on the football field and drop passes. You got to do better than that, bro, which I think he will. And I think because he's going to be a focal point, because Jalen Hurts is going to look to get him the football, because he's a receiver that can run in between the numbers, not just outside the numbers, I think he's definitely going to have more than 60.5 receiving yards in this game. So let's review it right here, right now. More on Jaden Daniels, more on Terry McLaurin, less on Saquon Barkley, more on A.J. Brown. We ended with more because we like more associated with PrizePicks. It's what they do. It's what we love to do. Give more, as in as much as we can. Welcome back to the Stephen A. Smith Show. Joining me now to discuss the new Trump administration in New York City, along with a bevy of other things, is the mayor of New York City himself, Mr. Eric Adams. An honor and a privilege, sir. How you doing? How's everything going? It's good to see you.
South Side, we outside.
That's right.
That's right. Hollis Queen.
That's
I was just telling you, we used to come out to Hollis to take y'all shorties.
Well, what they didn't tell you is that we really didn't want them because we loved the ladies in Cambria Heights and Laurelton. It was other areas, the Hollis people. So he's like, okay, you do what you do.
And you got some nice cats came
yes,
from
we
Hollis,
do.
man.
Without question.
A lot of quality came out of Hollis.
I grew up with Run DMC. LL Cool J was right down the block, 5 minutes away on Farmers Boulevard. And, Ja Rule, 50 Cent, a whole bunch of cats came from the Hollis area, from the Queens area.
You know what, brother? Working class people.
That's right.
Working class values. Mom worked in a daycare center.
Yep.
She used to be up every day, led by example. Homeowners.
That's right.
Many of our values come from.
That's right.
What we saw.
And the community raised us.
Right.
It wasn't just the parents, it was the community.
That's right.
We're going to get into all of that, Mr. Mayor. But my first order of business is that today, of all days, you are the talk of New York City right now. Everybody's talking about you. You're stealing headlines and what have you because you talked about how you haven't left the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party has left you. That's the quote everybody's been parading around all over the place right now. As we sit here today, how are you feeling about your administration, what you've accomplished, and most importantly, the support or lack thereof you've received from the Democratic Party?
Well, it's added the theme of the working class people. And when you stop talking about working class issues and people are hurting and you having this intellectual conversation and have a philosophical approach of just addressing what are people feeling every day. And I have never left the streets. On the subways, I would stop in the middle of the night when barbershops closed down. I would go inside and sit down, smoke a cigar, drink a little Hennessy with the people inside and just feel them. Right. And they're saying that the party's not talking to us. And when I say the party, I'm not talking about people who are registered Democrats. I'm talking about those who are putting out the messages of what is important to the Democratic Party. And they have left the average working class person and individuals. And that is what I'm trying to say to the party, that, it's not like I abandoned the party. The party has abandoned what working class people have been fighting for.
You deal with this, and you will continue to deal with this a hell of a lot more than me. I'm just your friendly neighborhood sports reporter that ventures into other areas of discussion. But I've been taking a lot of heat because of my willingness to call out some of the things that I've seen from the Democratic Party. And it's almost like there's supposed to be this onus, this level of obligation as black men that we're supposed to have to the Democratic Party. And clearly you're being challenged on that now because of the positions and the stances that you have been willing to take. As a black man, not just the mayor of New York City, how do you feel when you hear people come to you with that kind of attitude?
Listen, brother, this is going to be one hell of a conversation, man. People don't even realize what it is to be a man of color, to be in charge of the most important city on the globe. We need to really understand that. I'm the mayor of the most important city on the globe, only the second mayor of color. Mayor Dinkins was the first, and I'm the second. I inherited a city that was engulfed in COVID, 220,000 migrants and asylum seekers. Crime was through the roof. Unemployment with black and brown people was high. You were looking at our children were not learning. I've been on Rikers Island more than any other mayor in the history of the city, speaking to inmates and correction officers who both are overwhelmingly black and brown. And so when you look at what I inherited, and then you fast forward to today, with all that we've gone through, we have more jobs in the city's history. More small businesses are open. Black and brown businesses have received billions of dollars in contracts from the city. We have outpaced the state in reading and math. We're doing dyslexia screening so that we won't have 30% of our prison population being dyslexic, like I am. Right. What we have done in the city, paying for college tuition for foster care children. Bond raters looked at the city and said, we're going to increase your bond because the way you're managing the crisis. With 220,000 migrants and asylum seekers dropped in our city without any support, we've turned around this city, and there are a lot of haters out there that don't want to acknowledge what this administration have done.
And why do you think that is?
Well, I think it's a combination of things. I was never the chosen candidate. I'm a bald-headed, earring-wearing mayor that's saying that you don't have to have this one stereotypical look to be successful in the city. And I think that there's a lot of people that want to send the signal that, okay, you can't run the city. I'm running the city, and I'm running and navigating us out of crisis, and I'm independent in doing so. You know, there are days that I wake up feeling one way and another way, and we need to be clear on taking these big cities to the next level.
Is that part of the problem, though, Mr. Mayor, in terms of the conflict, the confrontations, the resistance that you may ultimately encounter? Is it the fact that you wake up with independent voice as opposed to being a slave to this binary system that we live in? And you got to take one side or the other. It's all one way or it's all another way. That's what basically folks have been saying for the longest time. And people like yourself seem to be giving the impression, nah, I'm not down for that anymore.
Right. You know, you look at those who want to check off a box, and if you don't fit into all of these items in the box, then you can't be classified as this group or another group. And that's not who we are as individuals and as human beings. We have different beliefs and belief systems. And I focus on that all the time. And this is not new. People fail to realize, go back 30-something years when I was in the police department, the 100 blacks in law enforcement who cared. I didn't want to be a cop. I was arrested and beat by police officers at 15 years old. Reverend Herbert Daughtry told me, you are going into the police department to fight from within. Wow. You know, and when we went in, people called me Uncle Tom, sellout, Negro. But we went in and started one of the most important human rights and civil rights organizations as black police officers. And so there's a long record of looking at my assignment and fulfilling my assignment. Brother, I can't even tell you how painful it was to say I put on that uniform of those who kicked me in my groin over and over again. My brother and I, we were pissing blood for weeks after being assaulted by those cops in the basement of the 103rd Precinct.
And before you became a captain, if I remember correctly, based on my research, before you became a captain within the police department, you were an officer literally speaking out against racism and prejudice all the time, which I might imagine didn't endear you to your colleagues and contemporaries in Boys in Blue.
Well, you know, and you know what was interesting? That many people didn't realize that many of those officers would come to me and say, you know, thank you for what you're doing, because they wanted to go home to their families. Right. And they knew that there was a number of cops that were overly aggressive and abusive. And by us talking out, it allowed them to not have to get caught up in that whole web that we were dealing with. And that's the same energy I took into the state Senate, took into being the first person of color to be borough president, and to now to become the mayor. I'm the same cat, brother.
Listen, if you're the same, more power to you, because to be honest with you, I don't know if you need to be the same. I think you've already proven who you are. You don't really need to be the same. You can mix it up a little bit. But I'm just looking at some of the things. I'm thinking about crime. I'm thinking about the local economy. I'm thinking about joblessness. All of these issues that have been addressed during your administration, what things have been like for you since COVID, and how basically so many jobs have been restored, et cetera, et cetera. What's been the greatest challenge for you sitting in that seat as mayor of New York City, particularly over the last
I
couple
love
of years?
that's a great question. The failure to acknowledge the success and our media. That's why this show is so important. Our media in this city, the failure every day. If you go back and look at from the time I took office, we've been under fire, and the failure to acknowledge the recovery of jobs, cycling us out of COVID, managing 220,000 migrants and asylum seekers and 170,000, 180,000 on their way, what we're doing around recovering the economy of this city. You don't read about any of that.
Yeah.
You know, do you know, even when you talk about in our transit system, when I go into rooms and I say, tell me how many crimes you think we have in the subway every day, people say 200, 300, 400. We have 4.6 million riders a day. We have 6 felony crimes a day. But when you read this city from abroad or in another state, you say, this is a city out of control. This is the safest big city in America. I just acknowledged today with the police commissioner, we removed 20,000 illegal guns off our street, 1,400 ghost guns off our streets. Shootings and homicides are down, crime is down. This city is the safest big city in America.
Let me throw this at you. You know what doesn't make sense to me? What doesn't make sense to me, based on what you just articulated, there was an election that was coming about this past November. We know who won. We know what happened. Prior to that election, the media has been accused of being the liberal media for the longest time. So one would think, when you consider the imagery that was emanating from the right, as they talked about crime in the streets and pestilence and homelessness and migrant crisis and all of these different things, those kind of things that you just articulated, one would think that the liberal media would pounce at the opportunity to articulate that message to the masses, because it would have served their purpose in support of somebody on the left, in this case, Kamala Harris, winning the election. Yet you're sitting here saying that did not happen.
Right.
How do you explain that?
They didn't highlight their message. They didn't highlight the largest city in America. They didn't highlight a person of color as mayor, lifting up this city. There was a success story that should have been the talking point for the Democratic Party. A working class mayor, $30 billion back in the pockets of everyday working class people.
Canceling $2 billion in medical debt.
There you are. Think about that, brother.
500,000 New Yorkers.
Think about that.
Okay.
500,000 New Yorkers, we're going to cancel their medical debt. That's the #1 cause of bankruptcy, and particularly for black and brown people. So there was a narrative here in the city that we could have talked about. Instead of that, there was a lot of anger because I was saying to them, you got 220,000 migrants and asylum seekers coming to the city, and you guys are not being responsible about securing our borders.
I'm thinking about what you just said. I'm thinking about the fact that when ultimately you were indicted by the federal government on fraud or fraud charges, along with other things, you were the first mayor to be criminally charged while in office in the history of New York City. How much of a role do you believe that played in what wasn't disseminated as it pertains to your administration's accomplishments?
I think a lot, brother. And, you know, many people never read the indictment.
Please.
And if you read the indictment, you're going to see that, you know, at the heart of this is that I was doing my job of telling the fire department, can you do an inspection on the building? This is something, when I sit down with my colleagues, they say, Eric, are you kidding me? You know, because this is what we do as governmental officials. And I was saying the other day on another talk show, you know, brother, how hard as it is to just sit back and watch me. I have to take all these body blows right now and can't defend myself, something that I've always...
Yeah. The lawyers tell you to be quiet, don't say anything. It's sickening. It's sickening, but go ahead.
You know, and so it's imperative for me, when you do an analysis of not only what I have said, Biden said his Justice Department is politicized, politicized. It's all the same size.
That's right. That's right.
Trump said it. And when I saw Biden's speech on why he impeached his family members, he talked about it. Many people didn't read that when you go through prosecutions like this, it's not only your guilt or innocence, it's the financial impact on you. It's just the embarrassment. I spent $2 million, brother. I'm a civil service. What does a civil servant get $2 million from? You know, you have to be able to have people who believe in you enough to donate to your
Rally
right.
public support.
Exactly, exactly.
And so I'm looking at it and listen, granted clemency to a few folks, those kind of things. That's what President Biden has done. And we'll get into that in just a couple of minutes or so. But in light of that, along with campaign finance charges, that's what they're throwing at you as well. You still have been determined to run for re-election in 2025.
I like that.
Case is coming up in April. Re-election, the
June,
primaries in June.
Right.
Why?
Right,
Why?
right.
What kind of message are you sending by continuing to stay in this race?
And I love that, man. That's a powerful question because many people are in dark places in their personal lives. And, Mommy used to say a dark place is not a burial, it's a planting. And, brother, as you know, with your parents, your dad and, raising a family of
yes.
6,
My
with
mom.
the same
I'm the
family of
youngest
6.
of 6.
Right. And Mommy loved all of us, but she adored me.
Same here. Same here.
And brother, I used to walk past Mommy's door and raising us on our own. I would hear in that room at night crying. Not knowing if she was going to be feed us, to keep a roof on her head. But you know what? Every morning she got up. She got up. And so in the first 2 weeks of that indictment, people that I had sleep on my couches when they were thrown out of their homes, people who their children were arrested and I went down and stood with them, people who I stood in the hospitals with when they were going through terrible times, they were tripping over themselves saying, you need to step down, you need to step down. It broke my heart. I'm not even gonna lie to you. But I said to myself, when I thought of Mommy, she died during my election, I said, you know what, Mommy never stepped down, she stepped up. And with all that we were going through, we still moved the city forward. And we knew that I had the right team to get it done. And I'm hoping that people who are in dark places right now, if you're a young man that's sitting in Rikers Island in a jail cell, you're gonna say, listen, my mayor was arrested. If you're a young person with learning disability, my mayor has dyslexia. I want people to look and see my life and say, don't ever give up. And don't let anyone define who you are and what you are. I know who I am, and I'm gonna fight like hell to make sure that people know that.
Are you gonna fight like hell to make sure you win the case, or that you are proven to be innocent? Because there's a difference with the voters.
Right. I think the pathway to justice come in many different ways. And one should not allow anyone to block their pathway to justice. It's the role of my attorney, Alex Spiro, to ensure that we pursue every pathway to justice. I did nothing wrong. I should not have been charged. And his job to pursue my justice. My job is that I was elected to represent the city of New York. And on every area, I have never abandoned that responsibility.
You reportedly went to visit President Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago prior to the inauguration. What can you tell us about that? And is it really about what people are saying it's about? You're hoping that in the event something goes down and you find yourself being convicted of these allegations, that he's going to pardon you.
And think about that for a moment. This is the President of the United States. I'm the mayor of the largest city in America that lost $6.5 billion due to the previous administration's inability to finance the migrant crisis. Why are people asking, is the mayor of the largest city in America going down to meet with the president to talk about how do we recoup some of those losses and how do we ensure that we move our city forward? It would be irresponsible for me not to go down and speak with the president. And hats off to him. He met with me days before his inauguration. That says a lot about his love for the city, and that says a lot of how much respect he had for this administration on what we are doing. I had to go down to Washington, D.C., to Florida and speak with the president.
It sounds like it makes a whole lot of sense to me, and I don't have any issue with it, but you're going to have critics out there of Mayor Eric Adams of New York City saying the primary reason you went down there is because of your personal legal issues, and that is the priority over the other issues that you just brought up, mainly $6.5 billion that you're trying to recoup. To that you say what?
I say the same thing. I say in New York, York, oftentimes when I'm speaking to the media, I have 8.3 New Yorkers. I have 35 million opinions.
That's right.
That's it. What it is. You're not doing anything if you don't have people who are going to be attacking you. So the numerical minority with the largest voices that are constantly and consistently, from the day I took office, have consistently talked about everything I am not, even though we showed the success. Those are the same people who are saying, well, your critics say. You know what? That's noise, brother. You know, I say all the time to graduates, let your haters be your waiters when you sit down at the table of success, brother.
Let's get specific and talk about the migrant crisis in this regard. About 229,000 migrants came to the city streets of New York. You had to find shelter for them. You articulate, I believe, during the Tucker Carlson interview, the lack of support that you had received, etc. Nevertheless, you found a way to maneuver your way through this and find yourself in a position where there were so many other things about your administration there was to applaud. Crystallize for the viewers out there and the listeners on iHeartRadio as well, the kind of potential damage inflicted upon New York City in light of migrants coming to the city, and New York obviously being considered a sanctuary city.
Right. And, you know, well said, and that's a great question. And so let's look at it for a moment. 220,000 migrants and asylum seekers came to the city, 1.5 the size of Albany. So a whole city was dropped in our cities. We were getting thousands a week, all times of the night. We had to provide every service that you would provide to an individual person. We had to do housing, we had to clean clothing, we had to provide food, we had to educate 40,000 women and 40,000 children. And we were told this: it's illegal for you to allow them to work. You can't allow the buses to come, you can't stop the buses from coming in. You can't even allow them to volunteer to remove graffiti, deliver food and services. You couldn't do any of that. All of that was against the law. And out of the $6.5 billion, the federal government wanted to give us $200 million and only gave about $125 million to provide for this service, which is a national problem. It's not a local problem. And so what it did was, in addition to the countless number of people who were pursuing the American dream, it brought in a small number of a criminal element that did a disproportionate amount of crime. So we had a public safety issue that we were facing in our city, and we had an infrastructure issue, because those $6.5 billion, people tell me all the time, okay, Eric, you got through it. Wow, congratulations. You transitioned 170,000 to go on to the next step of the American dream. But what is the damage, the long-term damage? I couldn't go after children who are chronically absent from school because we didn't have the money. My older adults, dealing with my housing infrastructure, that's $6.5 billion. Now we're up to $6.9 billion that were removed from dealing with the real issues that we wanted to invest into our city. The long-term impact to New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, Denver, we have not witnessed the long-term impact yet to this crisis.
So with that being said, are you still supportive of the city of New York being considered a sanctuary city?
And so that's so important. These are good questions, brother. People conflate what sanctuary city is.
Please explain.
A sanctuary city is saying that if you are in New York and you are paying your taxes, then those tax dollars provide your services, your police services, your hospital service, your education services. And so right here, if you're in New York, we're not going to deny you those services, because you buy a loaf of bread, you're paying taxes. You buy gas, you're paying taxes. So with those tax dollars, you're paying for the goods and services of the city. That's what the sanctuary city means. What we have been saying, what American people have stated, Donald Trump got the popular vote and the electoral vote. And so the people of the city said, we got to fix our borders. You can't allow people to come in the country with no destination, not knowing where they're going, and then you're telling them you're not allowed to work. Imagine that for 6 months.
But what about somebody that's looking at you? Because I got to be honest with you. Mr. Mayor,
yes.
I have been on this show. Right. I've been on the airwaves. And I mean, with all of these billions you're talking about,
right.
I think I was the loudest critic of the $53 million prepaid credit card. I was losing my mind. I'm like, wait a minute. I know, look, I've been black all my life. I've been in New York City for the better part of my life. I'd be damned if I ever saw some damn prepaid credit cards coming to the black community, and I was born here. So I'm like, I'm looking at it and I'm saying, how could that be supported?
I love
Explain that to me.
I love that. And that is why it's important to be able to tell your own narrative. Okay. So let's look at those credit cards.
Please do.
Those cards. We were required by law to feed every migrant and asylum seeker that was in our care.
Okay.
Food was being delivered that people were not eating. And a lot of it was being thrown out. We were wasting money. And so my former deputy mayor, Sheena Wright, first deputy mayor, came in and said, listen, there's this minority company called Mocafy. We give people a food card with around $11 a day that they can spend for food, and they're gonna go to the local bodegas, shops, and restaurant within the area. So we're going to recycle the money back into the community instead of a large conglomerate that we're spending. It saved us money, and we were able to put money back into the local communities, and it stopped the food waste that we were seeing of taxpayers' dollars. So we did a pilot to say, let's see how successful this is. And so on first brush, when you see people do it, you say, wait a minute, what are you giving these guys credit?
I lost my mind. All I saw was $53 million in prepaid credit cards. I said, prepaid. Oh, I was hot. I was hot about that. So I needed that explanation.
And even the editorial boards who responded at first, like the Daily News did a whole piece, and say, listen, this is a smart approach to government. Because what many people don't realize, people know my law enforcement background, they know what I'm doing around health in the city, but really people don't appreciate the fiscal management that independent bond raters who determine how successful you are managing the city have raised my bonds. They say this cat has managed us through COVID. He's managed us through the asylum seekers. He's managing the city and been fiscally responsible.
I want to transition to the issue of crime, all right? Because on May 1st, 2023, 30-year-old homeless man, Jordan Neely, was killed after being put in a chokehold by Daniel Penny, a 24-year-old United States Marine Corps veteran, while riding the New York City subway. He was found not guilty. This past December, a woman was set on fire as she was sleeping on the F train. When you think about those incidences, those kind of things that you happen, like you said, the number is considerably lower than people even recognize. But you know the visual is what it's all about. You know, I mean, you see a woman on fire, you scared. You scared. You don't want your daughter on there. You don't want your wife on there. You don't want your mom on there. You're going to get scared. You're going to be in panic mode because you're worried about what, damn it, could it be you? When you talk about addressing crime, how do you believe your administration has gone about doing it? And how has it been successful?
Crime is perceived and actual. And where our failure, I tell the team, we lost the perception. Because when you have incidents that overshadow your success, no matter how impressive your numbers are, it overshadows. When you have 3 people stabbed by a person with severe mental health illness, when you have someone set on fire, those visualizations are real. And I respect how people feel. I don't want to come to people and tell them, listen, here are my numbers, this is how well we're doing. How you feel is important to me. My success in this city has been overshadowed by 3 things. Random acts of violence, slashing people, pushing people to the subway system, putting people on fire. Those small numbers have a major impact on how people feel. Second is recidivism. We have a lot of cats that
going in and out, coming out,
unbelievable,
getting arrested and coming right back out in the streets, sometimes the same day.
Right. We have about 575 people that were arrested over 7,500 times for shoplifting. We have 36 people who were arrested over 1,100 times for a crime.
That's just asking police officers not to do their job.
You know what I'm saying?
What purpose does it serve?
You know what I'm saying? And let me tell you the third issue that overshadows: severe mental health illness. We have people with severe mental health illness. When I first got elected, I went into the streets January and February and visited people in encampments. I saw human waste, drug paraphernalia, schizophrenic, bipolar, and I told the team, we can't live like this. And many people were saying for years, even when we were growing up, when people were sleeping on the street, our families said, listen, just leave them alone, they're crazy or what have you. We closed psychiatric wards like Creekmore and others and didn't give people a landing place. And now you see them on the streets, they're doing they part of the random acts of violence, a small number of them. And so when I said we're going to tackle this, my team said, man, you out of your mind, man. Nobody dealt with this stuff. And I said, no, this is inhumane. We got to stop this. And when I was out in the street, I met a guy that was living in an encampment who was a retired police officer that just slipped through the cracks. And I said, we're not going to continue to do that. That has overshadowed our success. Crime is down, shootings, homicides are down, our economy is back, but it has been overshadowed by those random acts of violence.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit more because we're going to work to not have those things overshadowed with all the good things that you're doing right now. And I just want to throw this out, and it'll please your team because I mean, everybody make sure I have my information. I got to give them their props where it's due, okay? You're talking about a plan to axe, taxes for the working class family. A plan to literally eliminate and cut city personal income taxes for 582,000 of the poorest New Yorkers. Anytime you're cutting taxes, I love that. I love that. I love stuff like that. You're planning to build 80,000 new homes across 5 boroughs, do small changes and bring the cost of housing down. You've got an initiative that has saved New Yorkers more than $30 billion through city, state, and federal programs since the start of the administration. Major stuff going on.
Working class people.
That's right. Having said that, some would say that you still got a lot to worry about because former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo is contemplating competing with you for the mayor's seat in New York City. And according to the recent polls, he's up about 23 percentage points on you. What do you have to say about that?
Deja vu. Go back to February of 2021. There was another Andrew Yang. He got in a race. He was measuring the drapes in City Hall.
I don't know why he never had a chance against you. I don't know who the hell told you he had a chance against you.
But the polls,
I never believed that.
The polls had him up double digit.
Something wrong with the polls.
Double digit.
Something wrong with the polls.
Right. And what I told the team, polls don't elect people, elect mayors. People do. We need to stay consistent, and that's what we did. And so I'm going to tell my story, and I'm going to let people see exactly what we have accomplished, and we're looking forward to that.
I'm not going to tell you what we're going to talk about next. I'm going to surprise you. I'm going to take a little break, but I promise you, where this discussion is going next is right in your wheelhouse, and you'll enjoy it immensely. More of the Stephen A. Smith Show with the mayor himself of New York City, one and only Eric Adams. Back with more in a minute. All right, everybody, listen up. With all the big-time sports action that's happening each and every day, NFL games, NBA games, and the college football playoffs, the Stephen A. Smith Show wants to make sure you are taking advantage of all of it. That's why we've partnered with PrizePicks, the largest fantasy sports platform in all the land, to help you cash in on all your sports knowledge. You see, PrizePicks is a daily fantasy app where you pick 2 or more of your favorite players, and then you select more or less on their projected stats for the game. Choose from any of your favorite players, Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes, and Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, all in the same entry. Then sit back and watch. The list is endless. And now with PrizePicks Flex Friday option, you can still cash out even if your lineup isn't perfect. That's right. Every Friday, just look for the protected play. So win or your cash back. And get this, PrizePicks now offers MasterCard for quick and easy deposits into your account during this sports season. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on PrizePicks. So download the app today and use code SAS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app and use code SAS to get $50 instantly after your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. Run your game. Welcome back to the Stephen A. Smith Show, here with His Honor himself, the mayor of New York City, Mr. Eric Adams. I want to get into a subject, and I want to be very, very unapologetic and transparent about where I'm going. Black man to black man, about the state of our two-party system and what kind of impact you believe that has had on the black community, particularly in recent memory, even compared to a few years ago to a decade ago to before that?
Right. Well, first of all, we should be, after the election, it should be about building up our communities and our cities and our country. You know, when people say, well, why are you sitting down with Donald Trump? Dr. King wanted to sit down with Nixon. When you pull into purchase something for your family, they don't ask if you're a Democrat or Republican. When a bullet carves a highway of death in your community and it hits someone, it's not a Democrat or Republican. Obama said it right. After the election, we must transform into the United States. The election is an intramural. There's no reason we're holding these grudges every 4 years. We say, who's the one up? And I'm going to take my ball and go home. No, I am very consistent on who I am and making sure that I'm willing to sit down and communicate with anyone. And I'm an open book, brother. There's never a time, even when you talk to my team, they never would say, you can't touch that subject area. I'm an open book. I have an authentic life. And I think as black men, we need to look into who is understanding our issues and agendas.
Just recently, I spoke up on behalf of Snoop Dogg and Soulja Boy and Nelly as well. And the only reason I spoke up for them was on this level. People were going off about them performing at the crypto ball, and it was supposed to be a part of the inauguration celebration, and Donald Trump was supposed to be there, but he wasn't there. And I'm like, so what? At the end of the day, you know what? You're making a little paper. Somebody's ain't gonna pay you 6 figures for one night's work. Everybody says it's not just about the money. It's not just about the money. But I'm thinking along these lines. This is our problem. We have politicians alluding to him being a racist, comparing him to Nazis and stuff like that, right? But then I'm supposed to expect you to go out and do business with this man and to legislate policy within this country. And then I'm thinking about people in the media. I'm not going to say any names about them right now, but they called him everything but the child of God. And then all of a sudden they're going to Mar-a-Lago to kiss the ring. And I'm like, you wouldn't have had to do that if you didn't go that far and you just judged on the issue instead of personalizing and engaging in incendiary content. For some reason, we don't seem to get that message nearly enough, especially as a community. Am I wrong in feeling that way?
No, you are dead on. And that is why we have to find our own space and not allow people to identify our space. And we need to really look at and do something that's really revolutionary. We need to start reading. Look at the real data. Don't just look at the headline. Don't just flip through the Instagram, the TikTok, or the quick Twitter post. Sit down and say, let me do some real research on the issues that are impacting us. Because you can't have generation after generation of different administrations, but we're still going through the same hell. Why are we going through the same hell? Archbishop Desmond Tutu had a quote that lives with me. We spend a lifetime pulling people out of the river. No one goes upstream and prevent them from falling in the first place. Poverty is profitable. And then when you look at who we're pulling out of the river, they look like you and I. People are making paper off of the dysfunctionality of government. And there's no real desire to change stuff. There's no real, you look across the country and see black and brown people who are reading at grade level. Look at the unemployment level. Look at the incarceration level. It's the same across the country. So either we born with some biological dysfunctionality or there's a profit in making sure we don't change these issues.
I want to hold both sides accountable.
Yes.
I want to look at both sides and say, you know what, it's been a binary system for decades. Both you parties have been in charge of our government, and look at the regression that has taken place within our nation. But then it took a step further, because when we get back to your point about how you never left the Democratic Party, you felt like the Democratic Party left you. I voted for Kamala Harris. I wasn't excited about it. I'll be the first to admit it. I just didn't like the divisiveness and the chaos that Trump had in his first administration, and I didn't want a repeat of that in round two. So my thinking was, if you got a Democrat in the White House, but you got Republicans in the House and the Senate, somehow people would be forced to compromise and things could get done. And I look at it in the aftermath of it all, and I'm saying to myself, wait a minute, we saw a president that clearly, I'll say it, there was slippage. You knew that, but you put him, you avoided the primaries. You made sure he showed up on the debate stage on June 27th. He wasn't ready. It was too late for anybody else. So Kamala Harris gets inserted in there. And on Judgment Day, which was election day, the voters said, we didn't fall for it. We didn't fall for it. Right. And the Democratic Party, to me, is still chirping as if it's the campaign trail, not recognizing that this man is in office and you're going to have to deal with them. How could we expect anybody to deal with Donald Trump if, as a Democrat, folks are still out there spewing the same old rhetoric?
And you know what? We need to start talking about governing right now. And then you look at a mayor of the largest city in America that makes a determination, I'm going to sit down and not war with the president, but work with the president. And people are trying to figure out why. I have a city to run with real issues around affordability and housing. And we have been successful in spite of what we're going through. Brother, in year one and year two, we broke records in individual years on how much housing we built. We broke records on how many people we moved from homelessness into permanent housing, how many people using subsidized vouchers for housing. We've been breaking records after records after records. And with the help of Washington, D.C., we can go even further.
What about people who say, Mr. Mayor, you're engaging in an exercise in futility because look at this man. He doesn't really care. This is what I'm just saying. I'm not, it's not me talking about.
No,
Their attitude is he doesn't really care. Look at him. He immediately got rid of, trying to get rid of DEI programs. Look at him. Look at who he surrounded himself with. These black folks, these minorities that have supported him. How many does he actually have in his cabinet? Look at him. It's Elon Musk for X. It's it's Mark Zuckerberg for Facebook and Meta and all of this other stuff. It's TikTok now. So he's insulated himself with media arms or information disseminating arms that can insulate him from the level of scrutiny. Mr. Mayor, aren't you just wasting your time even trying to communicate with this man? What do you say to that?
First of all, I'm an Elon Musk guy.
That's right.
I love the technology. I love what he's doing. I think this cat is going to put us on Mars before we know it, and all the secrets that are in our universe. So I believe in what he's doing. But think about it. We're saying, look at him and what he's doing and surrounding himself with. But then you get a straight up South Jamaica Queen street cat that's able to sit down, that he's willing to pick up the phone and say, let's sit down and talk. And you want to demonize that action. So we can't have it both ways. You can't look at, well, he's surrounded himself with a lot of billionaires, and now you get this straight up blue collar mayor he's saying, Eric, let's sit down and let's have a conversation, and you want to demonize that also. Some people enjoy the emotions that's attached with misery. And no matter what they see, brother, they going to say, woe is me. You know, I could have said woe is me when I was arrested as a child, but I became a cop. I could have said woe is me because I have a learning disability I learned about in college, but I pushed through and became the mayor of the city of New York. So you can easily sit back and look at your circumstances and say, I would never do it, or you can use your circumstances to build your character and make it happen.
Do you believe Donald Trump is interested in helping New York City citizens?
Yes, I do. The president loves New York. He made his prosperity here in this city. I believe he understands how important New York is for the country. We're the economic engine for the entire country. And I think that this is a great opportunity to look at some of the things that we need to do here in the city. And I'm going to continue to engage with him. I'm going to try. And this is not unique. Let's understand something. When President Biden won, I went to see him before being elected mayor, and I talked with him about the crime issues we were seeing in our city. He was able to appoint the 18...
And he loved talking to you until you highlighted the migrant crisis and how it was debilitating New York City.
It took 10 trips to Washington, D.C. So it wasn't as though when he got elected, the same thing I'm doing with this president, I did with President Biden. He came to the city to sit down with me and the police department to talk about the issue of the day, which was public safety. So this is not new, you know. I have sat down with gang leaders. I've sat down with people who are my staunch critics. If we don't communicate, how the hell are we going to ever hear the other sides of issues?
How desperate does New York need the federal government's assistance?
Oh, brother, it's unbelievable what we need from the federal government. All that you see, the billions of dollars we send back to the federal government, there's a lot we don't get back. And it's imperative, everything from our educational funding, you look at many of the grants that allow us to do infrastructure building. When you look at our law enforcement issues, the laws that are coming out of Washington, we need the federal government. If you don't have a real partner in the federal government, it is going to make it challenging for you to carry out the functionalities of running a city like New York.
One of the things that Donald Trump is making a lot of noise about is the executive orders that he handed down, the inordinate amount of executive orders that he's handed down just his first couple of days in office. Which one has stood out to you the most?
All of them we have to still study. People are questioning me on executive orders, and I say, damn it, the ink is not even dry.
Right.
Let me read it.
Yes. Because he can sign an executive order, but that don't mean it's going to hold water. Right. That doesn't mean you're not going to have to deal with the government. Congress, for example, you got a lot of stuff to work through.
And some may come with lawsuits, some may come with challenges, but I think the spirit of what he's saying, and I've been saying this over and over again, this is the greatest country on the globe. No other country has dream attached to its name but America. The American dream. During the migrants and asylum seeker crisis, I went to South America and watched people walk thousands of miles through the Darien Gap, putting their life on the line, all because they wanted to come here. And many, an overwhelming number, want to come to New York. And so when you look at how we have all of a sudden become ashamed of being the greatest country on the globe. Our children are being radicalized. They hate the country. Some of the Ivy League institutions are talking about, the destruction of America and dismantling America, their students. We no longer appreciate our product. And I think that out of everything he's doing, to hear people chanting USA, USA, this country is the greatest country on the globe. Is it perfect? Hell no, it's not. But if you were to tell those who criticize this country, here's a map, pick where you want to go, a whole lot of people won't be going anywhere.
The one thing that one could argue in favor of the right and against the left is that the right has been preaching about how America is the greatest country in the world.
Yes.
And they've accused the left of doing the exact opposite of that, which is the protest that you pointed to, along with various other things. Is there any legitimacy to that in your eyes?
I think it's extremely legitimate. There are various systems of government. You have communism, you have socialism, you have capitalism. We never stated we were not a capitalist country. It's about compassionate capitalism. It's about coming here as a dishwasher and one day owning a chain of restaurants. It's about growing up in Hollis, Queens, and now I'm becoming one of the premier talk show hosts. Where else are you going to be able to accomplish that? It's about being dyslexic and arrested, and now I'm elected to be the mayor of the greatest city on the globe. The possibilities are endless in this country.
And you're sitting next to somebody that was I had undiagnosed dyslexia that they found out about, and ultimately, this is the kind of stuff I'm sitting here today. I ask you this because when I think about diversity, equity, and inclusion, that has nothing to do with what we just talked about.
Right.
But getting back to DEI, I would like you to define the definition of DEI, what it should mean. When you hear DEI, what should that mean to the average American citizen and the employers out here?
Yeah, we cannot ignore the fact that there are many people who were passed over based on their ethnicity and based on their gender and based on their lives. I would talk to some of my Muslim brothers and sisters, and they were denied jobs because they had a job. I would talk to some of my Jewish brothers and sisters, and there were law firms and other jobs they could not have. And African Americans, I could think about my sister, my older sister, how many jobs she would train someone who was junior to her and constantly watch them passed over her. So we know there were some historical problems. Now the goal is, how do you give opportunities to people regardless of their ethnicity, their gender, their lifestyle? That's what I believe it should be. Qualified people given opportunities.
And that's one of the problems that people have when they look at the Trump administration or they look at the Republicans and the conservatives, because every time you hear DEI, whether it's in the media on the right or from politicians, when you hear DEI, it implicates or insinuates these are unqualified individuals that got jobs because of DEI. Right. They're not looking at the fact that DEI was necessary because there were plenty of qualified individuals who didn't look like you, share your cultural identity or background, that you didn't give a chance to show you what they could do. They're not doing that, and that's something that the right, to me, needs to get their act together about when they talk about DEI. To that you say what?
Listen, well said, and I speak with folks of color who are very much associated with the party, and they say, listen, there's areas we have to improve upon. There's a lot of things that I could disagree with people on, but I want to find places on where I agree on, and the only way you could get it at the table and talk about allowing that pathway to success is you have to be at the table. And talk to people and not yell at people. And that's where folks are. If we're constantly yelling at each other, we would never hear each other. And that is my role as the mayor of the most important city on the globe.
Before I let you get on out of here, just a couple of questions, because I know I'm a busy man. I really appreciate this time. September 15th, 2023, you awarded media mogul Sean Diddy Combs with the key to the city and declared the day Diddy Day. First of all, I want to know, I'm curious, what goes into determining who gets the key to the city? I just want to know. I'm just asking.
No, and you know what's interesting? I'm glad you said that, talking about DEI. When we did an analysis of who were getting the keys, it didn't look like us.
Wow.
It didn't look like Jose.
Okay.
It
then you gave it to somebody that looked like us, and what the hell has he gotten himself into, man? I mean, come on, man. Come on. But go ahead. I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. Go ahead.
You can't live life by what's in the front window. You got to know, you go based on what people have done.
Right.
And so there's a whole panel and committee, and what we did, we broke it up into entertainers as well as those who contribute to the city, and people looked at his contribution what he has done, and others that we honored, we knew that we should give him that award. And listen, my heart goes out to him, you know, as he go through his legal struggles.
Right.
You know, my heart goes out
If
to
he's
him.
innocent.
Right,
Yes.
exactly.
Right.
You know, and you know, there by the grace of God goes I. We all going through something. Right. And so my heart goes out to him.
The key was returned last year. Did you ask for it back?
The committee did. Yeah,
The committee did, not you.
Yeah. No, I'm not the individual person
Right.
that determined. There's a whole committee that sits down and they made the determination because of the highlight of the case. And his team they were cool. They said, well, listen, we understand what's going on. We respect that. They didn't give any pushback. This is the big boys, big girls club. We all know that you have to deal with the issues that are in front of us.
Only reason I ask is because, you know, when Luigi Mangione, you know, allegedly killed the United Healthcare CEO, Brian Thompson, you were right there when he arrived in New York. So I'm asking because you were right there. You know, you will be seen front and center when it comes to issues such as that, no doubt.
Listen, I'm on the ground, man. I was on the ground when Officer Mora and Rivera, two young officers, were shot and killed, assassinated. I was on the ground when an 11-month-old baby was shot in the head. I was in the hospital with the family members. I believe that being mayor is both substantive and is symbolism. And we have done a great job in the substantive part of it, but the symbolism of a person who's allegedly committed an assassination in our city with a silencer, watching him come back in the city, I needed to look him in the eye, and many New Yorkers said, thank you for being there, because people were traumatized. And if I lose my CEOs in this city, I'm losing employees, I'm losing tax dollars, and I'm using the economic stability of this city.
You sound like a conservative. You understand that, right? And some people are gonna look at you and say you sound like a conservative.
No, but think about us for a moment. You know, I went to the Church of Christ in South Jamaica, Queens. Our philosophy in the family we grew up in, you know, I'm not sure what your dad did, but I'm sure he was
hardware, silver hardware.
Blue collar worker, brother. Blue collar worker.
Mother, registered nurse, Queens General Hospital.
Think about it.
Yeah.
Think about the core values and principles that they're from. You know, your family, I believe, is from the Caribbean.
That's right.
Coming here, may have left family members behind, eking out their way, not ever looking for a handout, just given the opportunity to work, you know, for their families and produce their families, the six children that they were raising. And so those are the principles that I live by.
What about people who look at the left and say, they want to give too many handouts? They look at the right and say, they don't want to give you a damn thing.
Right.
Which way do you go? How does the mayor of the largest city in the United States answer that question?
I love that. I love that. Because what happens all the time, people want you to be on one side or the other. And it takes a lot of discipline to say, you're not going to pigeonhole me. I may have a conservative view on a topic, and I may have a liberal view on the topic, and I'm going to address that based on where I am on the topic.
But devoid of being pigeonholed, devoid of, you know, taking a side per se, because I'm right with you. I believe exactly how you do. I'm not a politician, though. They say you need that support in order to get support. You need to take a side.
Right.
How do you answer that?
And I think they're wrong. I think the numerical minority are at the extremes. The overwhelming majority is in the middle. We have to encourage them to come out and vote. I think there are more Americans like you and I that are concerned about affordability, public safety, and making sure they can house their children and have a safe place for families in the city. But we've allowed the extremes to hijack the narrative. But I think the overwhelming number of New Yorkers are just like you and I, want to provide for our family and make sure they have a future.
Last couple of questions. When I think about you now, let's think positive.
Yes.
Let's say these allegations are going to go away. Your issues, campaign, you know, fraud and campaign finance, all of this stuff. We're going to do away with all of that. It's you against Andrew Cuomo for the mayor of New York. I'm a sports guy. I like competition. I mean, what kind of prediction would you put forth if you found yourself in a position where you were going up against Andrew Cuomo for the mayor's position, for his honors position in the city of New York?
Well, I think that, to me, and this is how I run my life, I'm not running against Andrew Cuomo or any of the other candidates. I'm running against myself. Play my best game. If I play my best game, it doesn't matter who's in the race because there's other candidates in the race. And what I've learned in electoral politics, right now, we're in the preseason. You know, we're not in the playoffs. When you're in the playoffs, your game has to be different. So you could be great, you know, in the season, but when you get in the playoff, let's see what you're made of.
He's a former governor that may be running for mayor.
Yes.
You're a mayor. All of this stuff goes away. Gubernatorial aspirations, sir?
No, not at this time.
Why not? Why not?
I am focused on you know, running this city. And listen, this is the second most important job in America. And, you know, it's a blessing every day being a mayor of the city of New York. And so no matter what's on the next journey, no one can take away the number 110th. I was the 110th mayor of the greatest city on the globe. Think about that for a moment.
You said second most important job. What's the first?
President of the United States.
Okay.
You know, but everyone knows when I meet the mayors from across the globe during UN week, they all argue about who's number 2 and number 3. And they look over at me and they smile. They say, we know who's number 1.
Get you. Last question,
Yes,
sir.
brother.
As we sit here talking right now as two individuals from the streets of Queens, New York, and we hear the climate that is out there, it's subsided to some degree, although there's obvious concerns because the election is over and the people have spoken. Donald Trump won the popular vote. He won the Electoral College vote. The right won the House. They got the Senate. It is what it is. What message would you say, particularly, specifically, to Black Americans out there who have this fear of what he's going to do and the kind of effect it's going to have on our community moving forward? And it's not to alienate any other minority. It's not to alienate white America. It's nothing about that.
Right.
I'm a black man from Queens. You're a black man from Queens. We're hearing the rhetoric and we see people overreacting to the slightest syllable that comes out of his mouth and that of the right if anybody from our community supports it in any way. What message do you have?
Yeah, and I like that. And I think your success has been because you may be of African ancestry. You speak to everyone. The guy that's sitting inside the bar that's Italian still can connect with you. The hardworking person who may be a janitor can see how you combine sports and politics. You know, I think that is the gift that you have, that you're able to connect with people. And so I say to African Americans who feel specifically that this is going to impact their lives, no matter who's the mayor, the governor, the president, if you truly believe God is in charge, then God is not going to let anything harmful happen to you. And so we have to draw on our religious beliefs, and we have to really fortify how we feel about the success of the children and families of our city. Stay focused. Don't be distracted. You have your dreams, you have your mission, and no president or mayor or governor is going to be able to impact that, because you and I both know we've lived through several mayors and governors, and many times they may have been elected and people have forecast doomsday, and we're still here today. You running the show, I'm running the city.
There you go. And we got resolve. The honor was all mine, sir.
My pleasure, brother.
Absolute pressure. The mayor of New York himself, the one and only Eric Adams. I hope y'all enjoyed that conversation. I know I did. And if you listened, no doubt you learned a few things. Until next time, this is Stephen A. signing off. Peace and love, everybody.